The rise of mass consumerism seems to have sparked people's desire for unique handcrafted items. At the core of the resurgence of the handcrafted movement are the fiber arts. In this segment of Frame, we will experience the creative process involved in spinning and weaving. To lead us in this conversation is our guest, Jeanette Ryan Bush. Thank you for having us at your farm.
You're welcome.
What are the fiber arts?
Well, fiber arts include a lot of things: knitting, spinning, weaving, tatting, even quilting is a fiber art. So there's really a wide variety of fiber arts.
And today we're focused on spinning and weaving.
Yeah, and spinning is actually one of the oldest fiber. Well, weaving is very old too, but spinning is one of the oldest fiber arts there is. I mean, spindles have been around for thousands of years. Shepherds used to spin while they were watching their flocks, because it's highly portable. If you do drop spindles, which is what this is, which is what I just taught Yvette how to do, it's a highly portable art. And there's a lot of different kinds of spindles. These are top whirl spindles. Jill has a Turkish spindle here. These were common in Turkey and parts of Russia, and they're all different ways to create yarn. And spinning just basically means that we're taking the fibers and twisting them together.
It's quite intoxicating, I was going to say.
Yes, it's very intoxicating. And so it just really is where you're just thinning out the fibers, and then you let the spin of the drop spindle just move on up into the fibers, and then it becomes very, very strong. And so drop spindles and drop spindling was the first. And then there was the invention of the spinning wheels. And I'm not even sure what exact year it was invented, but Leonardo da Vinci developed the part of the wheel that makes it a self-winding bobbin. On a wheel here, I'll do a little bit.
Which is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And what kind of yarn are you using?
This is fiber that is from, I raise sheep and goats and llamas. And this is fiber that's from my flock. So it's a mix of wool and mohair.
Yeah. You can use cashmere and silk, and
you can spin linen, you can spin cotton, you can spin hemp, you can spin ramie, you can spin bamboo. I mean, there's almost endless fibers for spinning.
No wonder it's been around since the beginning of civilization, because every archaeologist has discovered some form of a spindle.
Yeah,
that they used even as really ornate pieces of art.
Some of them are very, very ornate.
This is so simple. I am completely mesmerized by this.
Well,
you taught me this in
like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Literally 10 minutes. And Jill just learned last fall, and now she's a spinning fool.
She's a well, I understand. It's very relaxing and therapeutic.
Very relaxing.
And there's nothing like making something with your own hands. We should say, if we hadn't said, we are visiting you during a Spinning and Weavers workshop, a mini weekend seminar.
Yes, it's a Weavers weekend here. Which is another, really important part of fiber arts. Weaving has been around for centuries also. And weaving and knitting both have been, historically, they can become subversive arts.
It's interesting, as you are giving us some history, is that you look at today's times and culture, and you can kind of see the parallels in some respects. People desire to not only, I'd say, disconnect from the 24/7 lifestyle we tend to lead with technology to relax, but also with what else is going on in the world, it makes sense to me that this resurgence is here. Okay, so how about we back up? I'm just whipping through what you gave me, what you started me with, and will you give us an overview of how you start learning on the drop spindle?
Yeah, so this is the whirl, and it's a weight, and that's what keeps the motion going.
Like, a top spin.
It's like
that you use when you were a kid,
like a top
playing with
spin
it.
that you played with when you were a kid. Exactly the same principle. And so what we do is, there's two ways to do it. You can do what's called flick spinning, which is just using your fingers and flicking, or you can do thigh spinning, which is my personal preference. You always want to go clockwise. So what I did was got a bunch of twist on here, and now, I don't know if you can see or not, but it's very, very twisted and compressed. Now I just stick it between my legs. And then this is the part that's called drafting. So I'm just thinning these fibers out a little bit, and then I pinch up here so it won't go on up, and I let go, and magically it turns into yarn.
That is just neat.
So you just draft it out, pinch up here, let go, magically.
Boom. Yeah. Boom. And it feels kind of like you're going to lose it.
Yeah, it does feel like you're going to lose it, and especially in the beginning, yeah.
Right, but it just, you have to trust.
Yes.
Trust the process.
Yeah, and you do have to trust the process, and that's part of the reason that people probably like it.
Trust the process.
Because we have to trust the process. Look at you, you're already doing it.
I am just working it. Look at that. I could really get into this.
Well, and when you get better, I mean, like I can actually spin without parking it. So I can spin just having my spindle hang there. But in the beginning, I'm a big fan of teaching people to park it when they're learning to spin.
How long have you been spinning?
I've been spinning for about 12 years, somewhere in that length of time, yeah.
What sparked your interest, actually?
What sparked my interest was actually animals. I'm truly come from an animal lover point.
I love your animals.
They're
you share them.
Yes.
And then you dye. Is this from
your
farm?
This is all from my farm.
Beautiful. Yep. How do you get this color?
I do use acid dyes. I do some natural dyes, but I don't do massive amounts of natural dyes. And sometimes you spin fiber that is just naturally colored off the sheep. I mean, sheep and goats do come in beautiful grays and browns and cream colors.
Yep. So,
see?
Now what happened there?
I broke it.
Well, how do you
get
it back? How do you fix it?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how you
Show
fix
us the
it.
secret.
And so, I mean, so I just said I've been spinning for 12 years and I broke it.
Well, I've already done that.
I know, but everybody goes, oh, but. So I think it makes people feel better if somebody who's been doing it for a while. So to get it back, you just merely kind of loosen up this end so that it's a nice, you've got a nice fuzzy tail there.
Okay.
And then we splice another nice loose piece from the fiber on there.
Uh-huh.
And then just start spinning again, get a lot of twist on it, and put the two together and just kind of twist them with my hand. And there we go.
That's pretty neat.
It's
very forgiving.
It's very forgiving. And you know, in the beginning, the first yarn you spin will not be totally smooth, but it's fun, interesting yarn.
Yep.
Like the yarn you've been spinning is, you know, it's designer yarn.
Ooh, I like designer. Now, there are different types of yarn that you can make, though. It doesn't, I think, at least for me, I think of really smooth, consistent with yarn. My mother taught me how to crochet when I was a little girl. Okay?
Right.
So I'm remembering that. But there are different types of yarn. You can have kind of chunks. What's that?
Right.
Lumps.
Lumpy, bumpy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And interspersed.
Heavily textured yarns. Yeah. Like actually on a piece that's on the loom here, there's smooth yarns and textured yarns together in a piece.
Do you want to show us some of the other activities happening here?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a room full of really fun people. I am intrigued by the looms. We've seen the table version, and now we are witnessing Barb at the floor version. And I have incorporated into our story Jane Woodhouse, who came in from Vermont to lead the weaving portion of the workshop this weekend. Would you please help us understand these beautiful tools that are being used to create woven art?
Well, this is a floor loom, which is sort of the advanced version of the table loom. In my opinion, they're easier to use. You have your hands free when you're working on a floor loom. Ultimately, if you've been weaving for a long time, you can weave very, very fast. I mean, it's almost like a machine. You can go so fast. There are floor looms. This one's operated manually, meaning your feet hit the treadles. The treadles do the lifting, and you can do combinations of harnesses, which makes for a more complicated weave. What Barb is working on here, and Barb, this is the first time she's woven, so she's a brand new weaver, and she decided to sit down and try this. But it's a fairly plain fabric, but what we were trying to do is this piece sample that's on the loom, when it comes off, can open up, and it's double the size. So there's 2 layers to it. It's connected on one side. Floor looms, in particular jacquard looms, which have been around for hundreds of years, were the first computer technology. They used punch cards, and it was that technology that led to the key punch, large frame computers that were used prior to when we all had personal computers.
Now, how long have you been working with looms, and then when did you pick up teaching?
I took a weaving class in college back in the early 70s. I was a clothing and textile major, and I went over to art ed and took a weaving class, and then sort of just kept at it. I'd pick up workshops, I got some equipment, and in 1979 I actually took a job weaving fabric for somebody that did limited edition clothing design, and I still do that kind of work today. And I did go back to college to get a master's, I just wanted to do more with what I was doing, and after that I started teaching some.
So since you work in the fashion industry to some extent, are you seeing more of this, and what's
there is a lot more right now? There's there's sort of this resurgence. For a while it was knitting but not so much weaving, but now people are starting to weave a lot more too. It'll be interesting to see what people do with it.
We have another participant in this weekend's workshop, which is Jill. Jill, how are you doing? Thanks for letting us peek in on your work. What are you making?
I'm making a little rug, and it's made with wool, and you have to beat it really hard to get the fibers to compact and be a very thick, sturdy project. Here's a sample of a rug that Jane did, and then we're learning how to do these different chevron patterns in it and things.
They're beautiful. So it's to be really tightly
very tight
woven.
Yeah. In a rug, you're going to beat as hard as you can because you want it to be sturdy on the floor.
Absolutely. Any parting words of wisdom and encouragement?
Well, just that the fiber arts are really good, and they're accessible to everyone.
Thank you so much, Jeanette, for being on this segment of Frame and giving us such a strong overview of the fiber arts. And we hope that you have had fun as well.
Yeah.
Okay. It's an art form that has played a pivotal role in telling the stories of families, communities, and society as a whole. In this segment of Frame, we will learn about the craft of quilting. Joining us is the Director of Education for the Carl and Mary Kaler History Museum, Caitlin Treese. Caitlin, thank you so much. Welcome to Frame.
Thanks for having me.
I think it's important that we start with what quilting is.
Okay, this is an excellent example of what quilting is. Surprising, quilting is actually the final step in making a quilt. So the final step is these lovely, beautiful fan and leaf designs that you see on this quilt here. This quilt is from 1928, and this is all hand stitched.
That's incredible.
I mean, it's incredible. It just see how small the stitches are together. And what quilting actually does is it takes the 3 layers of fabric, which we'll see later, and binds them together. So it sews the 3 layers together, and that's what actually is quilting. And that is the final step in making a quilt.
Okay, and then what about these elements of this particular quilt?
This pattern here is a very old pattern that's been around for a very long time, and it's called a bear paw. And you can actually kind of see where it gets its name, the kind of paw looking.
Yes.
And this part of a quilt is called a block. And that's actually what you do first, is you cut out your blocks and you piece together each block. And then you would put all your blocks together, and that makes a quilt top. And that is then quilted for your finished top.
It's exquisite, and I'm listening to you say the final step, and it's hard to grasp a little bit.
I know it is.
For me. It's such a beautiful work, and to imagine that women spent such detail and time in perfecting every stitch, and then designing the stitches.
And that this was all done by hand in their imagination. You know, I can't even think about that. The art that goes into something that in many cases was just on a bed.
Right, that you take for granted. It's just it's comfort and warmth and human protection, but it was so much more than that.
It was, and it is today as well.
Yes, I've looked at some contemporary quilts, but you have some here and you'll show us, and the art form just continues to amaze me.
This is actually one of my quilts. It was the first quilt that I ever made. My mom and I worked on it together, and it basically came out of I started collecting t-shirts. Every time I went somewhere, by the time I was getting ready to go to college, I had all these t-shirts. I put them up to go to college, and my grandma suggested, well, why don't you make them into a quilt? And we thought, well, we've never quilted before. My sophomore year, my mom and I took a quilting class during the summer, and we thought we'd jump into it. So this has about 10 years of t-shirt quilt collecting. This quilt was on my bed for my senior year of college.
Wow.
And now we're showing it here. So it's a very popular trend right now.
What is the most meaningful element of this particular quilt?
You know, I think the most meaningful element is just that my mom and I did it together. This quilt, as you can see, is the 3 layers. Show up very clearly. So we have the top of our quilt, we have the batting, which is in the middle, which is what makes it warm, and then we have the back of the quilt. And this quilt is not yet a quilt.
Okay.
It hasn't been quilted yet. So these stitches here are just basting stitches. Another modern invention, these are water soluble. So once I quilt and wash it, these stitches will disappear.
Get out.
I know.
That's cool.
Pretty amazing.
It is.
So this is a very modern quilt, but you can see that the patterns between the two are very similar. So the first step is we make our blocks, and these are our blocks.
Okay, so this is a section from, I won't touch it, but this area to this area, and you have a design within that space.
Exactly.
Okay, and you make the blocks as large or small as you want?
Exactly. You can make, I mean, there are thousands of different patterns for blocks.
All right.
Then you take a bunch of blocks, in this case I think I have 16, and you sew those together. Then when you connect the blocks together, you make a top.
All right.
Okay, so then we have our top. We layer the top with the batting. This is more of a synthetic batting, whereas with this one, an older quilt has a wool batting.
Oh, I see the difference, yes.
Then the back of the quilt is just, in this case, I just used a plain fabric. In this one, it's another plain fabric. It's just a large backing piece. It's very rarely seen. And then you get to the quilting.
Drum roll,
yes,
please.
And that's sewing the 3 layers together. And then you put a binding on it and you have yourself a quilt.
And this is where, when you sew the 3 layers together, you can come up with those really fanciful designs like we saw in the original quilt. I'm getting it now. What about you? Okay. Let's look at some of the key pieces that are part of the exhibition that is currently happening here. We have a surprise celebrity special guest for you, so hang with us. To describe the background of this quilt I'm standing in front of, remember I told you about that special celebrity surprise guest? Well, she's here. Susie Jones, welcome to Frame.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. This is a really great example of a community effort. If you look at this, these individual blocks were done by different people, and they're depicting scenes in Lynn County area. You have Wilson,
I love the pigs.
This is when they were building the 5-in-1 dam. A brownstone, the old Mercy Hospital.
Wow.
Bruce Moore.
Yes.
Veterans Coliseum.
Uh-huh.
Rockwell Collins. Quaker Oats.
Yes, this is a beautiful piece, again telling the story of a community through the art form of quilting. And Grant Wood.
Grant Wood, absolutely.
American Gothic.
American Gothic. You can't have
that.
Cedar Rapids without a Grant Wood.
You can't. You have some patterns you're going to show us. And by the way, everybody, Susie is a celebrity because she is an avid quilter and she has some pieces that she's personally donated to this exhibition. So she's going to give us a little bit more insight. And let's start with this quilt because it has a special design.
This one depicts a fan. Each block is a different fabric, and they're put together with a curved seam, which was very interesting in years past. Not easy to piece, all hand-pieced. I like all the different fabrics, the scraps, because quilters were the first recyclers.
That's true. This is
because they
art.
used up every piece of fabric that they could find and did just some wonderful things with it. But this one is a fan pattern.
Oh, it's beautiful. Look at all the vibrant, rich patterns and colors and the textures they create.
Typical purple in this particular era. Put them
Really?
together. Yes, yes.
And that color gives you the era.
Mm-hmm. You can tell when a quilt was made by the types of fabrics. Now, combinations of fabrics, a very popular one right now is pinks and browns, greens and purples. You can just tell a quilt by the colors in it.
This next quilt is quite unique because it is won by a public figure. Not only that, but an African-American individual. And this piece is on loan from the African-American Museum of Iowa. Susie, what do you know about this quilt? Because it has a very special pattern.
The pattern that's in this quilt is called double wedding ring. And the curved piecing and the little tiny pieces are all not easy to do. It was a wonderful one. It is all hand-pieced and hand-quilted. This particular pattern is quite the trick for even modern-day quilters to do. And many people would make one of these as a gift for a new bride. It just is a very special quilt. Mr. Reed was the first black man elected to the Iowa House of Representatives. He was very fine man and an entrepreneur in Cedar Rapids area, and in quite the time, late 1800s and early 1900s.
Remarkable. Thank you for explaining this one to us.
You're welcome.
Shall we play?
We should play.
Okay, we're gonna go play. Come play with us.
One of the things that Caitlin has come up with to do for the kids to learn how to quilt. This is a 9 patch. She's run it with threads, and the pieces of felt stick on our wall, and you can put up various color combinations.
All right, I'm gonna get involved in this.
You sure can.
And they'll stick.
And this is a basic 9 patch quilt. We even have ones over here that have triangles, and you can put triangles together.
Now, Susie, I want to do this.
You can do that.
Can do that?
Well, here, let's do it this way. You find another one to go with it.
Oh, I can't put a triangle on a square?
You can make a square with 2 triangles.
I want to do it the hard way because I'm a little rebellious.
Fine with me, whatever.
Just play along. We're playing, right?
Here, you can even do it this way.
Okay, let's see it.
You can do this one.
Ooh, okay, let me find some more.
And this one. Oh, there's a gray one.
Okay, you want another one? Okay.
But let's put the gray. Let's make a nice design.
Okay.
Let's put the gray one there.
Let's make
like
it pretty.
this.
Do we want any white in that one?
Oh, well, we can do that.
You could just endless options here.
Endless options is right.
Oh, how fun!
We can just play till who laid the rail.
Now that's an oldie but goodie.
Yes.
Now see, I could see the adults kind of not really fighting with the kids, but challenging them on playtime here.
Absolutely.
This is great.
And Here, you wanted to put it over the thing, and we'll put him over there.
All right. Yay. And so this just gets you going, puts you in the mindset, in the creative mindset to plan your own design.
All right.
Correct?
All right.
Caitlin, we're at the end of the story. We have these balls, these quilted balls. These are really fun. I wish I could juggle, but
I can't either. I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll just leave it at that. But we want to end with this beautiful quilt, which appeared in a French magazine, I understand.
Yes, it did.
And this was created by a local quilter, correct?
Yep, this is a local quilter. Her name is Deb Eggers, and she's from one of our local quilt shops as well. And this went all the way to France. The quilt actually had to fly to France to be photographed for the magazine. And it is called Faded Stars is the pattern. It was a new pattern she designed. And as we talked about colors showing the eras downstairs, colors also define a quilter. I myself prefer the bright, really vibrant colors, as you saw on my t-shirt quilt. Susie is our patriotic quilter. She likes red, white, and blue. And you'll see a lot of quilters choose the same color palette. So this is, you know, the beiges and the red. So that's another way. But we have some great modern quilters, all from local the Quilt Guild and quilt shops that have also been so kind to loan us quilts for the exhibit.
Oh, fun. So the color palette becomes somewhat of a signature.
It can, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for giving us the beginning and an advanced lesson in the art of quilting, and we hope that you all have a further understanding and appreciation for the role quilts play in our society. Thanks for tuning in to Frame. Doc! Frame is sponsored by Allegra, Click Marketing Solutions, Style Folio Jewelry,